Hello, world. Thank you very much for joining our live stream. This is Monica Kang from InnovatorsBox. I am tuning in a few seconds early. Just wanted to welcome you all officially to our Innovators Global Summit, Global Innovators Summit. So glad you are here. Please take a moment to say hello as you are joining in the chat box. I'll play some music for us before we get started. And just, super gratitude and excited to have you here. So again, we'll get started shortly, but let me share some music to get us started. So I'll see you here shortly. So stay tuned and I'll see you back in a little bit. So with that being said, I believe we are able to get started. Welcome all. Great to see you all in live chat. Thank you all very much. This is Monica Kang from InnovatorsBox, and I welcome you to the Global Innovator Summit. We have an awesome day ahead of you. For those who are here for the full program, I am so excited you are here. And again, for those who are joining us live in this live streaming, you are in for a treat. If you heard a second, some of the music to get us started, thank you, YouTube, for making free music available online. I am super excited to welcome you all for this conversation because we have a lot to navigate as innovators. We started this conversation of what would it look like to have a meaningful summit? What would be needed for innovators right now as we navigate? And thank you all when you subscribed and joined this event. You have expressed what you were hoping to learn more. And in fact, I am super excited because one of the things that I've asked all of you when you signed up is where you are calling in from and what you're hoping to learn. And if I can give you a little sneak peek, I hope you are equally excited as well. We have over 16 countries from 32 cities joining us live today. Wherever you're calling in from, take a moment to say hello and connect, share what you are excited about. And I've also asked you, what do you want to get out of this conversation or the full event for those who are joining the full event? And I loved hearing that one of the things that really was an importance was connecting. And I agree. I mean, would you say that right now it's been a little hard to connect, build meaningful relationships, and really think about how do we navigate change in a more meaningful way? So today, again, you are in for a treat. We have an amazing moment to build upon with amazing speakers, individuals who's going to share a little bit more how they are navigating change right now, what they wish they understood better, and how do we have the courage to think differently. So with that being said, let us get kick-started. Again, if you're just joining, please take a moment to say hello in the chat box, share some questions. This is an interactive time. I'm going to be monitoring real time in the chat box to see. I see a lot of folks joining in. Syrian, Jeff, Boja, Bishop, Bonnie, Jeannie, Syrian, Hillary. Awesome. So please say hello. And with that being said, are we ready to get started? With that, I believe my colleague Andrew is here, who's going to get us for the first program part. So if you can give a round of applause. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Monica. Thank you so much for having me here. I am so pleased to share with you that we're going to be kicking off the first part of the live stream with Eliza Martin. And Eliza Martin is a Food Network Chopped champ. So, you know, that show on TV that you watch, she was on that show, and she's a chef entertainer as well as a teacher. And so, you know, her culinary adventures has gone from New York City to Chicago, and now she's working in San Francisco. She's worked with the James Beard Foundation, the Rachel Ray Show, Saveur Magazine, and many, many high-end restaurants. And really today she's going to demonstrate her and share her innovation story. So Eliza.
Hi guys. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. This is so meaningful. I am so grateful to have everybody in my kitchen. This is my little oasis here. So I hope we can find some magic together today.
That's so awesome. So tell me, what are we cooking today?
So this morning we thought it would be fun to do just some simple, beautiful buttermilk biscuits for our Saturday together. Brunch is one of my favorite meals of the day. So putting something fun and easy together would be just awesome. We want to make this super accessible. We want to make it just feel easy to be together in the kitchen. I really believe in the power of food. And I think that we can sort of change our narrative with how we eat and how we take care of ourselves. So we're going to make just a delicious buttermilk biscuit, quick and easy fruit macerate compote, and it'll be just an easy way to start Saturday.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you don't know how to make biscuits yet, yes, you could look up a recipe, but hey, guess what? We have the Chop Champ here, Eliza Martin, and she's going to be sharing. So Eliza, take it away.
Oh, awesome. So you guys, I'm gonna just show you quickly how to put this recipe together. I do want to share that my big mission is to get people cozy in the kitchen. I think that our relationship with food has changed dramatically over the last several generations, and we've lost touch with our hands. So for me, making something like a dough is really special because we're kind of getting back in touch with that visceral learning. What I'm going to share as we go through is a little bit about my crazy antics in the kitchen. I'm going to share a little bit of science and a little bit of know-how, and hopefully give you a couple tips and tricks you can try out at home and maybe get you a little bit more comfortable with this space. So what I'm going to start with for our biscuit dough is just a little bit of flour. We're going to start with 2 cups of flour. I've got that in here. All-purpose flour is what we're using. Of course, you can feel free to substitute a gluten-free version, oat flour, whole wheat flour, if you'd like to make it a little bit healthier. And I'm going to start throwing in a couple of ingredients. When you're baking, you almost always start with the dry ingredients. So I've got my flour. I'm going to throw in a teaspoon of baking powder. That's our leavening agent. We want our biscuits to puff up and get beautiful in the oven. I'm going to toss in a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. So baking soda is actually in baking powder. We're just ramping up the ability for these guys to get fat and beautiful in the oven. And then I'm going to throw in some salt. So if you are a scientist and following along, salt is one of the most important ingredients we use in our cooking. And it's probably the reason you love restaurant food so much. Salt is just a simple compound, NaCl. And the cool part about salt, I'm throwing in a teaspoon there, is when it hits your taste buds, the compound actually breaks. So that's what allows you to taste everything else. The compound whizzes around inside your mouth and attaches to whatever it can find first. So when you add salt, you automatically ramp up all of the other flavor that you're adding into your dish. That's why it's so useful. And when chefs say a pinch of salt, we're talking about a 5-finger pinch, okay? Don't be too lenient on the salt. We're gonna add into that also a little bit of sweetness. So I'm gonna add in 2 teaspoons of sugar. Again, this is just all the dry ingredients. So I've got my flour, my baking soda, my baking powder, my salt, and now my sugar, 2 teaspoons of that. I'm gonna give this a little whisk. This little guy is shaped like a balloon for a very important purpose. It's getting all the lumps and bumps out of my mixture here. And it's also aerating everything. Whisks are shaped like this to add air. So this is part of how we're starting to get our biscuit dough light and fluffy. Gorgeous. Now, you can totally choose your own adventure here. If you're feeling a little frisky and you want to add some sort of spice or some sort of delicious component, you could add a pinch of black pepper. You could add a pinch of cinnamon here and make it a little bit more signature taste for you. I'm going to set that aside for now, and I'm going to show you a couple tricks for our wet ingredients. So I'm going to make my own buttermilk right now. This is very simple. I like to have fun tricks in the kitchen that save a few dollars. And also, if you don't have certain ingredients on hand, you don't have to panic. You can totally substitute things. Buttermilk is what we typically use in our buttermilk biscuits. But to make buttermilk, all you have to do is combine 1 cup of milk to 1 tablespoon of acid. So the proportion, yes, Andrew's already eating for us. Yay. Perfect. So you guys, oh my gosh, let's take a moment and talk about how important food is. This is something that we do 6-7 times a day, and not enough of us are in touch with what we're eating. So it's such a special and sacred thing to be able to feed ourselves well. And I really believe in the power of doing it with your 2 hands. So I'm on my soapbox. I have my milk here. I'm going to add a little bit of acid. Again, the ratio is just 1 cup of milk to 1 tablespoon of acid. What's an acid? Something like lemon juice, something like vinegar. So I'm going to add in just a little bit of this juice. I'm going to let it sit for just 5 minutes, and the milk will actually curdle and separate and turn into soured milk. Despite its name, buttermilk is not milk and butter. It's just soured milk. So I'm going to turn my milk, whole milk, into buttermilk. Of course, you could totally use the same technique if you were using a dairy-free substitute. If you're using something like coconut milk or oat milk, you can absolutely just use the same technique. The soured milk will taste almost identical to this dairy version. Gorgeous. So I'm going to let that sit and separate. A little bit of science is happening here. The fats are separating as the acid kind of oh, look at him go. Andrew.
Yeah. So tell me, why do you put buttermilk versus just regular milk? What is the difference?
Sure. It's just a flavor profile. And obviously we have the South to thank for this beautiful kind of recipe. Oh, Creole food is one of my favorites. But buttermilk has just that sort of sour profile that we want, so that when it bakes, that we've got the sweet from the sugar, we've got the salt has amped up the savory profile. So then we get a
That's great. Yeah.
Buttermilk. I really believe, and this comes from working in Indian restaurants in my past, I believe in activating every part of the palate. We have so many different parts of our taste buds. There's so many pieces that you can turn on, and when you can do every single one at once, that's really big in Indian cuisine. Sweet, spicy, savory, sour, hitting every point. That's how you get a really well-balanced flavor profile, and how you get people to love your food. So,
yeah, that's right. We love good food.
So after that, here's my other little trick, and I'll teach you this in hopes you'll pass on some of these funny tricks. In one of the Creole restaurants I worked in, I would use this technique. I'm going to get out of the freezer what I'm about to use. So for buttermilk biscuits, this is kind of a science trick. Butter is our dearest friend in this scenario. And to get the right consistency of dough that we want to be able to have a really light and flaky, beautiful biscuit dough, I freeze the dough just for about 10 minutes before the butter, just before I use it, so that it maintains these little pea-sized granules. That's really important, because when you put your biscuit dough into the oven, you want the butter to release steam. When those little pockets of steam happen, that's how you get those beautiful layers. So here's a fun way to do that quickly and easily. I've got my semi-frozen butter, and I'm just going to grate it. If you have a cheese grater or a box grater like this is how you can get those perfect little granule pea-sized bits of butter mixed in through your dough. And this is how you can kind of maintain the perfect layers with very little fuss. This is so much.
So we talked a little bit about refinement, and so really this is a step of refinement, right? You can probably add the butter in by itself. You know, Thomas Keller talks about refinement, the process of refinement. So this is a tool of refinement, and you're actually making, restaurant quality biscuits, probably something that you find in some of the top kitchens.
So here's why this is wonderful to me, because I make it look like it's refinement. This is just saving me time.
Well, how about both?
I think this is part of the disconnect right now, Andrew. I really believe that because of reality TV and because of our separation from our food, we've somehow turned food into this far off, like unreachable thing. In reality, if I can learn how to do this with my two hands, I believe anybody can learn how to do this. I'm a corn-fed bumpkin from Pennsylvania who learned how to cook just by immersing myself in it. So this fun fact is something I learned from an awesome chef of mine. I pass it on to you in the hopes you'll pay it forward. But this is honestly the time saver. And now look at, I've got perfectly grated butter that's gonna mix beautifully into that dry ingredient. So all I'm doing is gently inviting the butter to break down just a little bit so that it looks like little pea-sized granules. This is gonna start looking a little bit like wet sand. That's the goal we're going for. This is not rocket science, and this is not too difficult. I want this to be super approachable. And I want you guys to be able to create something similar on your own accord for your next Saturday brunch. So I'm just breaking down the butter into small little pea-sized shapes and encouraging it to mix a little bit. Now I'm not touching it too much. This can be something that I think can get us into trouble. You wanna let it be. You don't wanna break down the butter so much that you've melted what we just put together, okay? So the butter, that gorgeous fat, we wanna keep in these lovely little granule sizes, okay? Now all I have to do is add my buttermilk and we've got a biscuit dough. It's just that simple. I'm gonna add between 1/2 and 3/4 cup of buttermilk. The moisture level in the air can actually change any dough you're working with, whether it's pasta dough, pizza dough, or you're making something like a biscuit dough. The moisture level in the air will affect the flour because a lot of that moisture can kind of translate into what you're mixing together. I'm gonna gently fold this together. I'm starting with a spatula, but we all know I'm gonna use my hands in a second. This is very visceral for me, and dough making is one of my favorite things to do in the kitchen. There's just something special about working something. Now for biscuit dough, I will caution you, you don't wanna over mix this. We're just getting the dough to come together. If you overwork it, you're gonna activate what's called the gluten. And gluten is that protein that some people have an allergy to. The protein is what stretches and bends. So when we're making pasta dough, we want it to be an elastic dough. I'm making biscuit dough. I'm not trying to get stretchy biscuits. They'll get hard in the oven if you over mix this dough. So you just gotta treat it like a lady. Nice and gentle, just until it starts turning into a nice round ball. It's gonna stick to your fingers a little bit, and my hands run kind of hot, so the butter is barely starting to melt. I wanna try to avoid that as much as possible, but I'm just trying my best to knead this dough as little as possible and bring it together into a ball. We're almost there, about 1 more minute. And if you're baking along with me, your oven can be set to 425. That's what we're gonna bake these at. Nice high heat so that they get caramelized from the butter on the outside and stay soft and fluffy on the inside. Gorgeous. Now let me show you what I have here. It smells so good. There's something special.
That's really awesome. I mean, just the fact that, you know, you're just showing just these steps of not overworking the dough. I think that's something that not many people would think about, right?
I think it's a nice metaphor for the state that we're in right now. Don't overwork it, you guys. Try not to overthink this. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be perfect. The beauty of food, I think, is not only that everybody can learn it, but that there's lots of ways you can kind of get creative about correcting it if something goes wrong. So all I've done is patted my dough here into about 1 inch thickness. And what I'm gonna do is just grab my cookie cutter. If you don't have a cookie cutter at home, you can totally just use a mason jar, easy peasy. I'm gonna just cut these out into little rounds. This recipe will make about 6 biscuits, but in my attempt, I'll show you, in my attempt not to over mix this dough, I'll show you how I'm gonna cut this. I attack it from the corner and then pull out 1 by 1 these little rounds. Look at those little babies. I fold in, they look kind of like little arms. I fold those in. Again, we're trying not to over mix it. We're not gonna overwork this lady. I attack it again from the corner and punch out little rounds. You wanna make square biscuits or triangle biscuits, you have at it. Enjoy your creative adventure. I love that. But this is how I'm gonna do it. These biscuits actually freeze really well too. So you can pop these guys on a sheet tray, throw them in the freezer, and then just bake off one at a time or two at a time. And you can also throw them in the fridge for just a few moments. If you found that some of the butter really did melt a lot, you can pop them in the fridge for about 8 minutes before you put them into the oven.
That's so awesome. By the way, I just want to let you know, everybody that's watching the live stream on YouTube is super hungry. And so they're saying, are you accepting deliveries?
Oh my gosh, no, I'm not delivering. This is just this easy. You can do it by yourself. That's the goal. I want you to be able to do this for yourself. Look, we only used a couple of ingredients, and just this quickly, we made some magic happen, right? You can make this with your own 2 hands. I'll be so impressed, so proud. You tag me and all that. I'm gonna give a huge shout. Maybe I'll send you an extra treat if you do it by yourself.
That would be awesome.
All right, so we've got our beautiful biscuits. They're all mounted up here. I'm just gonna invite this one to get into a round shape, and that's it. 6 beautiful biscuits in under 10 minutes. We're gonna pop those on our sheet tray. Now, if you're gonna put them right into the oven, I'll show you what that looks like. I've got my little sheet pan here ready to go. These I would just brush with a little bit more buttermilk or melted butter. So they're just gonna need a little love on top. Again, we're working with a fat here. The fat's gonna help caramelize the top and get that gorgeous golden brown. Then brushing with a little bit of melted butter, you can just use your buttermilk as well. And those get popped into the oven for about 12 minutes. Now, through the magic of television, I'm gonna give my hands a quick rinse here and show you what these little babies look like. Dun, dun, dun. When these guys come out of the oven in the next 10 or 12 minutes, they're gonna be
amazing,
flaky, and they're gonna have some beautiful little natural layers in them. Look at that golden brown. I mean, there's.
I have a question. How do you open a muffin, a biscuit? Sorry.
How do I open a biscuit?
Yeah.
With my whole mouth in one bite. I like to. So for me, it's kind of like, you know how you love the muffin tops? I love the tops of biscuits. So I give them a little slice, sort of like this, just down the middle. And then you can fill these with whatever. I'm going to show you right now a fun and quick, easy compote that we can create to make this kind of all come together. I love sweets in the morning, especially. So I'm going to show you a really easy way to use up some of that fruit in your pantry. Maybe some stuff that's like starting to get overripe. I'm going to use a bit of stone fruit since that's what's in season right now. But you can feel free to play with this recipe 100%. A compote is just a fruit mixture that gets cooked over low heat and just forms a little bit of a syrup, and it maintains the fruit pieces. So it's not a jam. It's not something that gets kind of blended and pureed and macerated totally. But the compote itself is just fruit that stays in small pieces, and we put it in a pot, we cook it for 10 minutes, and we've got something gorgeous. So let me show you really quickly how you can put together something like this. I'm going to be using some prunes and some plums and a little handful of grapes and just a little bit of Meyer lemon. I have a tree growing in my backyard. I'm very lucky. So I am going to demonstrate ever so quickly. If you don't learn anything else today, take this one with you, how to hold this guy. This is your best and greatest tool in addition to your 2 hands in the kitchen. Our knife is just an extension of our hand. So the knife use is really, really important. Once you get comfortable with using a knife, I think kitchen can become a lot more accessible and you can move a lot faster. When you're holding onto the knife, it's really important you use what's called the pinch grip. So that's just a little okay sign. You wrap that around the handle here and you get really close to the blade. This is just simple physics, right? We've created a really powerful fulcrum because I'm very close to the point of contact. Now I have a lot of power. So I use that pinch grip and my fingers wrap around very simply, just like I'm holding a hammer. Incorrect is putting that finger on top. That's going to make you unbalanced. And it also puts all the pressure in your wrist, which can develop carpal tunnel. So what you want to do to have the most power and the most stability is using all that power from your shoulder all the way down to your fingertips. Pinch grip. It's going to feel a little funky if you've never done it before. And rock and chop. The knife is always in contact with the board. The other hand makes a little claw. That rests up against the knife just like that. And now I don't even have to watch where my knife is landing. I know where it's hitting every time. It also braces the knife so I get those perfectly clean cuts. So in rapid fire time, I'm gonna throw together a bit of this beautiful fruit and we're gonna throw it on the stove top, okay? So I've got my plums. I'm just gonna give them a little pitting, as you would say, and I'm gonna dice them up very, very quickly. So stone fruit right now is one of my favorites to work with. You can see I'm just using that pinch grip and that bear claw to hold on to these guys. I'm gonna toss these off in a way. I really don't like to waste anything, so I try to use every part of the food as I'm cooking and chopping. That's all gonna go into our bowl. And eventually I'm just gonna add this all to a little sauce pot and we're gonna cook it off.
So there's a story about the whole cutting fruit and prepping. Do you want to share that story with everybody about how somebody hid all your prep food?
What? How somebody is my prep cook?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Andrew, you're awesome. So, you guys, I'll share with you a little bit. In my family, I think I know what Andrew's getting at. In my family, we don't have a whole lot of sharing of feelings. So our effort and our way to express ourselves is through beautiful food. So what I do with my hands is very visceral, but it carries a lot of love. That's my way of just demonstrating my care for other people and for myself. We get this like one sacred vessel. I really believe it's important to take care of it. So as I'm chopping these up, I'm just making sure to use what we call the bridge. And then I'm dicing these into smaller pieces, roughly all about the same shape. This compote's gonna come together really, really quickly. And then this can also take care of, like I said, using up some of that fruit in your pantry that you might have forgotten about. It's sitting in the crisper. Like we talked about before, I am gonna add a little bit more of a balanced flavor. So I've got the sweetness of this fruit. I'm gonna add just a little bit of tang, a little bit of sour to our dish. I use a microplane all the time. The essential oils of any citrus fruit live on the outside. So a lot of the essence, the aroma from a citrus fruit, that stuff's gold. Don't get rid of that. Anytime a recipe calls for the juice of a citrus fruit, orange, lemon, lime, make sure you use the outside too. That stuff has more flavor than the juice. So I'm gonna just gently take away some of that zest. I hold it kind of, my zester sort of like a cup, so I can see what I'm doing and I don't get any of the pith. That's the white bitter stuff. We don't want any of that bitterness. Another metaphor for our days. None of that bitterness today. So we're gonna toss our zest right into this compote. I'm gonna give it a little rub and I'm gonna juice my Meyer lemon right into this dish here. The last thing that's gonna go in is just a little sweetener, your choice, honey, agave, sugar, whatever you like the best. You're gonna want just a little bit of extra sugar because that's what's gonna turn into this syrup as we let it cook. Let me show you that now. I'm just gonna use some organic sugar. You feel free to choose your own adventure.
So just while you're doing that, I also wanted to share Royal Tilo's life coach says, Eliza speaks very clearly and descriptive, so much better than many food shows that I've watched.
Oh, so kind. I appreciate that. And I mean, I should probably share that I started in the food industry as an actress, which is hilarious. I can share a little bit about my background and how I got into all of this. Let me throw this on the stovetop. So we've got what happens when you add sugar. I'm just going to teach you a tiny bit of science here. When you add sugar to those fruits, the sugar starts pulling some of the juice out. So you're going to start seeing a little bit of a syrup form already. We love that. This would be a macerate. I could mash this up, macerated fruit. You could totally just use that, serve that on the side. I'm going to cook mine down just so it gets a little bit richer, a little sweeter, a little more syrupy. I'm putting this over medium heat. I'm just going to set it and forget it for a moment. We're going to talk. So
yeah, so we have roughly about a minute left.
Perfect.
You know, maybe we can start talking a little bit about, you know, just what you're doing now and how you want to impact the world.
Awesome. So I started my food journey accidentally, and I found out when I was in college studying abroad in London how important and powerful it was to feed myself and feed myself well. So because of that, I dove headfirst into culinary world. I left my acting career behind and decided to transform the world as best I knew how. So I spent the last 10 years working in restaurants, trying to learn how to cook quickly, easily, efficiently, and with love. So I believe in passing that on to the next generation. There's no doubt in my mind that we're a little bit in trouble with how we see food and how we receive food. You know, we order out all the time, or we spend a lot of time just snacking. We don't really think about what we're putting into this one sacred vessel we have. So if we can pay it forward, it's sort of a domino effect. Right now, I work at a children's culinary school and event space where I teach and teach and teach about the love of food. My students start at age 2 and they go all the way up to grandparents' age. We'll be polite. And so that, to me, is the greatest gift I can give this planet. I believe it's also the greatest gift. If I pass it on to you, you share with someone else. I tell my kids every day in these cooking camps I run that they're ambassadors in their household. And it's just a domino effect. If I teach a small skill set, like how to hold a knife, somebody else may get comfortable in the kitchen. Food is the most powerful gift we can give. And bringing people around a table right now in this wild world that we're in, I think there's really nothing greater and nothing more powerful than that.
Thank you, Eliza. Are you going to assemble it, or I think, I'm not sure if we're almost out of time.
You got it. Here we go. I've got my gorgeous biscuit. And I'm going to grab myself a little baby plate. Now, of course, you can rub a little bit more melted butter onto this. I'm going to do that. You just give it a little brush with some melted butter. After they come out of the oven, it's best to do this. Let them rest for about 4 or 5 minutes, and then slice these puppies open, slather them with a little bit of that extra butter, and look at this gorgeous compote. Oh my goodness. Now, you can totally keep cooking. You can totally just keep cooking. The color's going to change, so it's going to get darker the longer it cooks. I like to keep mine kind of this gorgeous, beautiful, colorful, whole fruit look here. We would call this rustic in the culinary world. This is very rustic. So that's it, you guys. It's just that quick, okay? Now we must garnish, okay?
Look at that. Herbs at the windowsill.
Just a little bit of fresh oregano. Call it a day. From my kitchen to yours, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this has inspired you to get a little more cozy in the kitchen. And as Andrew mentioned, I am a speaker and an educator. I would love to be a part of whatever plans you have for the future, whether it's virtual or live one day. And I wish you all the best. I hope everybody stays safe, stay connected, and truly keep cooking. Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Well, thank you, Eliza. We'll be moving on to the next part of the live stream. Monica, over to you.
Thank you very much. I mean, wow, how amazing is that? Can we give another round of applause virtually again in the chat box? If you're tuning in, please give a little kudos, gratitude to the amazing Eliza and Andrew for taking the chance to share. It's huge. I think as innovators, it is critical that we take the moment to always learn from everywhere. I think we often think about like, no, we just need to learn in the workplace, but hey, food is something that is in our lives every single day. And I'm so pumped because in our next part of the conversation, I have the honor to dive deeper into all of this with a handful of friends coming in different industries together. They are in walks of lives as innovators. And one of the things that we are very curious to think about is, how in the world can we navigate this time with more courage, more understanding, to be more mindful? So again, I have a treat to moderate this conversation. And some of our panelists will be speaking a little bit more about how can we dare to have the courage to innovate when things are not obvious. And let's admit that this is not an obvious time. thank you again. Oh, I see a lot of your comments in the chat on raising your hand. But as you join this part of the conversation, I invite all of you. What's something that you want to innovate more, and what's stopping you from taking that courage? So with that being said, I would love to see if our guests are here. And Kevin, if you don't mind giving us a start and saying hello and introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Kevin Felix Chan. My initials are KFC, and I run an education company called Best Delegate Model United Nations, where I am rethinking about how to innovate in education right now and what education means, and how to empower today's students to become tomorrow's leaders. And super excited to be here. Excited that the last speaker is a food educator, so excited to share more about this space as well.
I believe we also have Dorita. Let me give a second to see where she is. Yes.
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you, Monica, for inviting me onto the Innovators Box. I'm sorry I haven't had enough coffee today. Thank you so much. My name is Doree McAlpin. I am Senior Vice President and Head of Litigation for Levick. It's a crisis management firm based in Washington, D.C. I'm currently working from home in Maryland, but I work with clients all around the world on some of the scandals and litigation and issues that keep them up at night, pain points.
Love it. Thank you so much. So again, now all of you on the live chat, I'm so excited that you have us here. I believe Diego must be on his way. I know he's going through a difficult time, especially as somebody who's in the restaurant industry, as well as entrepreneur ecosystem development. So we'll look out for him. But for now, let's get started. So again, for those who don't know me, my name is Monica Kang. I'm the founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox, and excited to have you all here. So again, while I have some questions that I prepared, I would love to hear from all of you, because it's a treat to have both of them to talk about how they innovate and take the courage to do so. So let me go dive right in. Nuri, if I can start with you, tell me a little bit more, especially with how you help with crisis management. I mean, this is a huge crisis we're all navigating. Could you share some wisdom into like how perhaps leaders can manage their time and limited resources more thoughtfully when our anxiety is all over the place, whether it's from COVID, George Floyd, and all of it? I feel like we're being more reactive at this time. Is there a way that we can be more proactive and mindful?
Yes, absolutely. And when you're looking at planning, especially for unprecedented times like we're in right now with COVID, who knew, last year that we would be facing a pandemic outside of some experts. This is really a challenging time for everyone. And I think first, you really have to think positive, that, just keeps you going every day. And I think the second, especially working in the crisis management field, we sort of try to see around corners. What's coming next? So in the past, like earlier this year, looking at COVID, when I was working with clients or preparing to work with clients on this particular issue, I looked at how is it going to impact employers and companies and individuals. And one would be, what happens when someone ends up infected in my workplace? That's number one. Like, how do you prepare? What do you say? What do you do? There's no playbook to look at because this has really never happened before. So intelligent planning, I think, is one of the most important factors determining what's coming up. I'm looking at what's coming next, and that's likely going to be economic challenges, a lot of businesses that might go away. So a lot of organizations, individuals, people are going to be impacted. There are going to be groups of people that are disproportionately impacted, especially in communities of color. So looking at some of the needs of the communities surrounding us and the needs of entrepreneurs and businesses, that's where we're looking right now.
Thank you for those nuggets of wisdom. And what I really heard is that to take action, the mindset, the long-term thinking, and just thinking through that holistically is really important. which Kevin, I know going back to you, in your case, you've had to innovate, not only in the way that you deliver your value to your stakeholders, where you used to be significantly in person, but also had to reframe your whole thinking and how you deliver. So tell me a little bit more how you were able to bring your service that tended to be in person online, but also what actually helped you then as you were serving your customers, because as we've just learned, that mindset is key. And I'm curious because I know that's something you care a lot about.
Yeah, so I run these programs called Model United Nations, and before it was all in person. So I had no online component before this. And I think for me, some of this courage to innovate really comes from just having that empathetic mindset, being empathy. So listening to what other people describe in my head as pain points. Because sometimes I might be uncertain what I want to do, but people around me definitely know what's not working in their life, so they will share that with others. Like, this is what's not working at home, etc. So I try to ask questions in an indirect way, like what are their fears right now? What's not working? And for us, working with students, I don't have kids yet, so I had to ask actual parents, like, okay, what's not working at home? And they would describe, my kids' social skills are atrophying as they're just playing video games all day. Or the students would say, I'm missing my friends. Or these lectures are so boring, like so with many O's, like so boring. Like homework packets are not engaging, and so forth. So all those things I consider to be like pain points, and I think that's the real pain points I can help solve and care about and help others right now. So how do I take that type of information and turn it into experiences where it actually does the opposite of that? And that's where the innovation comes from, is empathizing with other people's pain points.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think a reminder that empathy, again, does not mean that you have to be a parent to realize what parents need or your stakeholders need. And I think that's a powerful reminder and how we start, because I think often, I'm guilty as well. As somebody who likes to ideate and innovate, we have all these ideas, we start building it, but then we forget, like, wait, who is this actually for? Which, connects back to a great question that in our chat box, Isaac Waring, thank you for your great question about, going back to your conversations about, being mindful and with the mindset. It's great, but there's a lot of challenges in how you still do that in the planning. And so he made a great point about intelligent planning, such as challenges for unprecedented situations like now. He'll love to hear your thoughts more about how you use analogies or how you define parameters for intelligent planning. So we'd love to hear your insight on that.
Oh, yes, that's, thank you. So intelligent planning involves, like, when you're looking at unprecedented times, so there's no milestone to say, like, oh, this is happening next. But I think you really have to have a true understanding of your environment. One, your marketplace, what's happening in the marketplace, looking at warning signs, especially in a crisis field. We're looking at warning signs all the time. We get some of those signs on social media for particular companies, just little murmurs of things that are signals for what's to come. So that's one big factor, just really listening, I think, really, really listening. If you're inside a workplace, listening to your colleagues, your boss, what's keeping your boss up at night in terms of planning so that you know what's coming, putting your ear to the ground, taking time to actively listen is one. If I'm working on crisis issues with a client, I want to understand some of the milestones, and I also want to understand the competitive market and my opponent. So let's say if it's a lawsuit, or if it's someone that's facing attacks in viral media, what's driving it? Like, what is, who's in their pajamas, attacking this person? So getting a true understanding of your environment helps you plan. And then you want to prepare for those, what we call gating events coming up. There are key markers in the horizon or on the horizon. And with those, you want to plan all of the what ifs. There might be, you scenario plan. You look at all of the different factors that could impact you, and you look at how it impacts all of your stakeholders. So you lay out all of your stakeholders. How does this impact my customers? How does it impact my distribution chain, so that I can plan for something unanticipated? Most importantly, I want to test for weaknesses, for gaps. and then make changes accordingly.
So asking lots of questions, but really
Yes.
being intentional about the journey, which thank you for sharing that and really breaking it down. Isaac, I hope that we addressed your question. And in fact, he raised another great question to Kevin, which is indirect question. He said, connecting to the information we need through a lot of questions is not easy. How is empathy the key to identifying these indirect questions? And I'm curious to hear, Kevin, your further thoughts on that. I agree, yes, empathy is great, but there's still a lot of other insights that makes it a little bit hard. So tell me a little bit more how other ways that you find insights.
Yeah, I think empathy with pain points is not always that inspirational. So the flip side of like fears is I would call it dreams. So what are the dreams of the people that we're trying to serve? What are our dreams? In my case, do we know the dreams of the students that are going to the programs here? And so sometimes it might not be like the dots, but then it's like connecting, well, where do they want to go? Here's where they're currently at, but where do they want to go? What's their dreams in terms of like how to be prepared to succeed in this world? What does that actually mean for them? And so I think once I come from that like positive sum mindset, like the abundance mindset, then there's like so many possibilities that are out there, and it's connecting. Okay, how do I solve a pain point, but then also help them fulfill a dream at the same time? Maybe they're stuck at home, but can I turn the classroom into home? Or maybe they're learning online. So how can we expand the classroom to be the entire world online instead of just who they are typically assigned with as school? So I think there's a lot of meaningful opportunities when I look at dreams. It expands the scope of things, and it's pairing that dream and that fear up together to create a really powerful experience.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think, and it's quite a thoughtful way. I think most of us, when we think about pain point and thinking from empathy, it's ends there. But I love that you're asking us to expand that even further to like, what's the dream and the bigger why? And with that being said, I know folks, you are seeing Diego has joined. Indeed, we are glad you are here. Would love if you can take a moment and say hello, introduce yourself, because I know talking about abundance mindset, you've certainly been thinking of abundance mindset, especially into industries that are hugely impacted. So Diego, share us a little bit more what you the two things that you're working on, and I'll be curious to hear how an abundance mindset in an innovation is helping you at this time. Oh, you're on mute, so let me make sure you're on mute.
It's okay? Okay. Hello guys, I'm Diego. I'm really sorry about being a little bit late. My computer wasn't coming on again. I have to change it, but I'm here from Brazil. I own a startup, and I also own a startup accelerator here. I work at Innovators environment, and coming from an abundance mindset, I really think that here in Brazil, we have a lot of problems. We have a lot of governmental issues. We have a lot of infrastructure issues. But some people and some entrepreneurs would say that this would be the worst scenario for entrepreneurship. And although it's really hard, it's also an abundance field to solve a lot of problems. And I think this mindset is really, really important because today all countries are suffering problems. And even though some developed countries have more easiness, or it's easier to make a new startup, or to found a new job, a new business, to start a new business. This scenario is really difficult. And if you don't come with an abundance mindset, you can be paralyzed about the difficulties that we face right now. So this is really, really important. And I'm currently working on a few projects to help startups here in Brazil. We work in an environment really, really interesting that it's a community that tries to replicate the Silicon Valley Silicon Valley way of thinking. And we called ourselves Cerrado Valley. And here we have a lot of examples to share with you.
Thank you, Diego, for sharing that and how you're navigating this time. We're seeing a lot of thoughts in our chat box. Again, thank you for those who are joining live right now. Though I do have some questions I prepared, I want this conversation to include many of your questions. And so we've already kind of included many of yours. Please continue to submit your questions. With that being said, I am curious to dive into some of the other aspect, going back to courage, is the courage to ask help. And I say this because I think often as innovators and problem solvers, we often lead those help, but often I think it becomes difficult to ask help. So Duri, would love to start with you. I think it's one thing for us to help others, but in a way, it's really even more critical in how we navigate within team members to build those clear communications and trust, especially online. Could you share maybe some tips and insights in how might be more mindful of that and anything that we can do, especially in a crisis like now?
Yes, especially in a crisis like now. I think that, when you are, and it's very challenging now because a lot of us are working from home, or you're connecting with colleagues or your business partners through video. So it's much more, I think you have to be much more intentional in terms of reaching out to others and asking for help. Number one, I would say, outside of planning, we talked about planning, but checking in is very important. Doing regular check-ins just to take a pulse, just to see how people are doing, even people outside of your normal circle. I think that provides a great opportunity to see how things are going, and you really learn a lot and connect with people, especially during unprecedented times. I think it's also just great to reach out to people when you don't need them. If working in the crisis field, we have a saying, and it's called use your peacetime wisely. So don't just reach out to people when you need them, reach out to them during other times. Let's say you have a business and you want to gain some visibility and you want to build up a base of reporters that you might connect with. Don't pester them when you need them. Why don't you reach out when they've written a great story, or retweet one of their stories like, oh, I really enjoyed the article you wrote on the use of drive-ins right now, during these unprecedented times. So have an understanding of the reporters and editors, publications, and influencers that cover your particular field. And that way you really understand the pulse and you have a better understanding of the marketplace. And that way, when it's time for you to announce something and, for your business, or you're breaking through with a new product or a new service or a new way of doing things, which is really important now to really think in an innovative way, think outside the box, especially in the restaurant field where, you're dining outside or you're trying to find other ways to connect with your customers. Just have a true understanding about what they need and establish a two-way communication.
So many nuggets of wisdom, and we are seeing the chat box responding to that, appreciating just really thinking, how do we be more proactive, not just transactional? And this is a long-term, this should be always a long-term relationship. Don't ask until last minute. And, you should be hopefully also giving that process and not just asking help. Thank you for sharing that, which ties perfectly, actually, Kevin, going back to you. I know what you've already alluded, there's multiple stakeholders that you're keeping track of: the parents, the teachers, the educators, the students. I think all of them are probably needing something different, and they're asking for help, you're asking them as well and where they need. But I'm curious, from all those different standpoint of view, as somebody who is balancing all those communications, like what's been a helpful way in how you can actually make all of these diverse stakeholders feel heard, and also thoughtfully provide a solution that connects, but also how you still self-care in the process. The self-care piece, actually, I'm gonna shout out to in the chat box who have asked. Menekishi has raised the point about during these hard times, it's hard for us to stay focused. And I feel like that's a question I would love, Kevin, for you to share as you share about how you manage these communications with these stakeholders.
Yeah, it's interesting you threw in the word self-care at the end, because when I think about all the stakeholders, I have to remind myself I am also a stakeholder in this whole process. And so whatever I do needs to also work for me as well, or else I would just end up burnt out, which I have in prior years of my career. So I think starting with self-care and setting that monthly intention for myself. What do I really want to feel like at this month? What do I want to create? And then I'll ask the stakeholders, okay, how does that fit in with all the things I want to do? And at the end, I can solicit a lot of feedback and try to do as best as possible. Sometimes I just might have to let go of certain things. I just can't do this now. And I tried rushing, trying to do like 2 things at once, and it just never works out. Even during COVID times, trying to launch so many things to help so many people, can't help everybody. And I realized it's better to help one group of people really well than to help many groups of people poorly. And so for me, it's being, realizing that there are those priorities, and to take care of myself as well too, and to realize I have stakeholders around me. It's not just about what I want, but what do the people around me want? My own family or friends or coworkers, etc. So it's multifaceted in terms of stakeholders.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, actually, if I can follow up a little bit more. Tell me a little bit more. Is there questions then perhaps parents or educators should be asking themselves more right now, especially with all the reopening in the school situation? I know it's been on high concern, both parents and teachers.
Yeah, so I think if we're focusing on what's the latest update, or here's the situation we're dealt with, then and relying just on that school to provide everything, then I think that will become very stressful, because it's going to keep changing, and we're becoming very reactive to things that are not working. And so I think I recommend taking a step back, which is just, how has education always worked in the first place, which was a classroom was part of it, but education and learning happened in the hallways, after school, on weekends, when friends are hanging out. All that is part of education. So how do we go back to the basics? And like I mentioned earlier, what are the dreams that I have for my child? And how do I enable those dreams, given that now I can recreate so many of those other components online? Like the whole world's my classroom now. And so to explore what's my child really interested in, and to create that plan together. Let's explore together, and therefore have something meaningful taking the place of our day, instead of this empty time that we feel like we have to fill with like video games or anything else. So that's what I would suggest, is go back to the basics. What do we actually want? And let's create that instead of reacting to what we're dealt with.
Thank you, Kevin, for adding that. And again, a deep appreciation in the chat box, saying that it's wildly insightful. People forget, yes, I'm a stakeholder. And also just remembering that, going back to the basics, the core questions, because we're all navigating change, is going to take a lot of courage. And Diego, this ties perfectly to where you are, because as you've already alluded, you were thinking about this both for your restaurant industry and for entrepreneurs in your community, that you've shared about where the situation is a little different compared to some of us in the States. I think, which is hugely important, again, for those who are joining live. We have 16, 17 plus countries from 32 cities joining us. So we are thinking global, which is critical. And Diego, as a result, one thing I am intrigued, if you can allude a little more, is thinking on behalf of our entrepreneurs and eco community builders, because it's, I think with both of your roles, you are truly thinking from that community aspect. And as Kevin has alluded, I'm curious how you're navigating and balancing serving others when things are constantly changing, and what is helping you to be more proactive instead of reactive at this time.
Well, that's a really tough question to answer. I don't know if I have the right answer, but I can share a little bit what I did. When I was just a startup founder, I searched on my environment for mentors, for other startup founders, and actually I couldn't find. And on this situation, I started to feel alone. I started to face a really difficult job, because I didn't have anyone here that I could share my problems, that could help me, that could at least listen and understand what I was saying about SaaS, about numbers, about other stuff. And in other countries, in this situation, in this current situation that we all are, I really think that it's really difficult to find other people that are available for help. So one thing that I did here, I started a movement and I started asking for people to join in to help each other. And that went really, really great. And today we are about 2,000 entrepreneurs and we have about 60 startups here in our city, in our ecosystem, and it keeps growing because we are still helping each other. So when we face a situation like this, I really think it's important to find your peers that think like and act like and work in your kind of environment to help you navigate through this, because sometimes when we face a really difficult situation like COVID, we don't have any ideas. And perhaps another person, another entrepreneur had a really big success and they could help you to see things differently. And when you are alone, it's really difficult.
Thank you for bringing us the home run message that we should not do this alone. I mean, guys, this is the very reason why we are doing the summit in the first place, to remind ourselves, hey, don't scratch your head alone somewhere. This is difficult time, and this is the reason why we are all here together. And so want to be able to loop in. I'm seeing, thank you all very much. I'm seeing a lot of great comments in the chat box, again, with deep appreciation. And as we wrap up on this, I hope all of you are resonating who are joining us live. I took down a ton of notes for myself. And again, the good news is you can just rewatch this if you want to remember again what we just spoke. But with that being said, we'd love to hear kind of final thoughts from each of you to share about, okay, cheat sheet, if they did not listen to anything, what is at least one piece of advice that you want to share and how they can step as innovators, we can have more courage. And again, innovators who might be entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs, students, executives, anywhere around the world. So we'd love to hear from Jerry, Kevin, and Diego. Final piece of advice.
So you want to go first? Okay. Well, I'll just start with, I guess, 3 takeaways, especially during these unprecedented times. One, all of us, we have power, collective power, individual power. So always use your power for good. That's number one. The second, especially for people outside interviewing that might be in transition or at a job that you're trying to do your best. Understand the power of your personal brand. I think is the second most important takeaway. And the third, especially when we're looking at innovation, is the best ideas win. So don't be afraid of failure and always keep trying. And thank you for the opportunity to present today.
Yeah, I think in terms of self-care and building that courage within to innovate is take some time for yourself at the beginning of the month. For me, I do a mini retreat with myself at the beginning of every month, which was just last Sunday, and ask myself, what's my intention for this month? And then let that guide me. And then also, what's my top priority for this month? And then let that also guide the things I'm doing every week. And so I have that at the top of my to-do list, my intention and my top priority. So then when I look at my calendar, am I being that person as I go about my week and my days? Am I doing the things that are going towards my top priority and as I do the things throughout the week and the day? And that just helps me build the courage from within for myself before I can even serve other stakeholders.
Well, and for me, guys, I really think about innovation in a way that innovation is to create value through something new. And that's why you have to be creative. And if you are facing any difficulties to create something new, look around you, look around in other stuff, look around your peers, your friends, and other entrepreneurs, what they are doing, and try to adapt that on your own business and in your own situation. Perhaps COVID is changing the environment for all the time. Perhaps we won't go back the way we used to be. And this could be a really great opportunity to start something new and something great.
And to bring all of that, I would also say be curious.
Yeah.
Because if we are not being curious, you're not here learning, you're not here being present. So be curious. How do we up our active listening, as we learned from Eliza earlier? Because at the end of the day, there is opportunity to build and learn. So with that being said, if you can help me give a round of appreciation virtually, thank you all very much. For the three of you, wouldn't be the same. And I know we will continue to build on this. And with that being said, as we transition to our next portion, I believe we have Jeannie, who's going to take us home run in the final stage. So Jeannie, are you there? And we'd love to see where you are.
I'm here. Hi. This was super exciting. Just monitoring the chats. It's like squirrel, what's going on? Listening to everybody. Thank you so much for this. This was awesome. I loved, as Monica said, golden nuggets. And we have more golden nuggets from V Tran. V, where are you at? Super excited. Yay! V.
Hey, Jeannie.
So I'm super excited to introduce to you V Tran. I had the privilege of meeting him last year in Kansas City at the National Leadership Convention hosted by the National Association of Asian American Professionals, where we have gotten to know one another. And I just want to share with you guys how I got to know him. First, I met him because he was part of the convention team. He pretty much orchestrated that entire convention of up to 1,000 people. That's another side note of his talent. But I was super blown away by the Butcher's Son, his performance that brought me to tears at the gala, the end event of the convention, just because it was his story. And a lot of us, especially Asian Americans, immigrant families, could completely relate. So we'll talk about that, but that's where I saw his talent firsthand live. He performed it live for us. It was a treat. But he is, well, I don't know, master storyteller, singer, songwriter, artist, actor, and just super talented. And just also a little plug that we've gotten to, I recruited him because I loved his work so much for the National Wellness Team that we're doing together, curating content and creativity for the National Association of Asian American Professionals. So that said, he calls himself, V, you call yourself a generative performing artist. That was the first time I heard that. Okay, so that maybe I'm not innovative enough, but I was like, ooh, tell me more. What is that? Tell us what that looks like.
Sure. Generative performing artist is a 3-word version to not inflict death by hyphenate to you or when introducing myself, because yeah, I'm an actor, I'm a musician, I'm a singer-songwriter, I'm a vocalist, I write my own work, and so generative, creating original work, and performing artist is just a catch-all for the different types of interdisciplinary modes of performance that I do. So it's just an easier way to say that.
Yeah, I don't want to steal that. No, and it's good. I think, well, because I talked about the Butcher's Son and I hyped that up, that's a good intro of who you are. You want to talk about that story or how that came about?
Sure, absolutely. So for those of you who are meeting me for the first time, my name is V Tran, and I was born in the shadow of Saigon, Vietnam, and raised in the cattle country of southwestern Kansas. My family, my mother, my father, my sister, and I came to America with the clothes on our backs and $20 in a missionary gave to us, and we built from there. And so The Butcher's Son is a autobiographical performance memoir about my family's journey, because we ended up in southwestern Kansas, and my mom and my dad started over like so many refugees, and they worked in the meat packing plants. And so I am the butcher's son, a preacher's kid and a butcher's son. And so it's a folk musical as well. And so it's just one of those stories that we want to share our stories, because we talk about it now, representation matters, but what I've noticed in our industry now is there's that real push for it, and it's our time. there were a lot of controversies throughout the years about yellow face, about, where are the Vietnamese people in these so-called Vietnamese stories? And, I pumped the brakes because I'm part of that bridge generation. It's not that there weren't talented Vietnamese performers out there, but that generation, when a lot of that work was being created, they were in the nail salons, they were in the meat packing plants, they were my parents, setting aside their talents and sacrificing so that I might be able to choose my path in life. And so now it's my responsibility to share their stories. Because I could have written The Butcher's Son as a solo piece and just told the stories about my family, et cetera, et cetera. But I remember thinking, okay, there's four of us. There's four main characters, my father and I. The way that I've written it, I play both those characters, both myself and my father. But then my mother is just this incredible character, and my sister is an incredible character. Two strong female roles that could be going to Asian American actors, and there were two in my home market in Kansas City who were just brilliant. And so I said, okay, let's flesh it out. Let's build it out with a larger Asian American cast, because that's more work for everybody, and more stories, rather than me just hoarding it and making it like this solo piece. So
I love that. So I wanted everyone to get a glimpse of what I saw, because I was moved to tears. So that was your story, and that was only a part of it. But how innovation, you have a great quote out there about how what you do, you're constantly innovating. And what does that look like for you, particularly during this time of COVID and having to shift your whole business?
Well, sure. And that's one of the things that being a performing artist has taught me, being an actor or being a musician, is it's a choose your own adventure. There's no one way to do it. Everyone's circumstances are different. And it doesn't come with an instruction manual. Theater school doesn't teach you the business side, and getting an MBA wouldn't teach you how to navigate this particular industry, and so you kind of have to learn as you go. But if you take the core concepts, the thing about like a theater education or a liberal arts education in the arts is it teaches you critical thinking, storytelling, and the ability to pivot. What I learned very, very early on, as a 5'4" Vietnamese actor, is that sometimes it has nothing to do with me. There are systemic things in place that I cannot control. But 99% of the time, if I get a role or I don't get a role, it has nothing to do with me. Because at a certain point, everybody's got talent, and so you have to make peace with yourself and what you bring to the table. You are your own X factor, and so if talent is being equal, when you go into that audition room, you can either run away from yourself or you can lean into yourself. And as a Vietnamese American actor, when I was just starting my career, there was that stubborn sense of, well, I don't want to just be cast in Asian American roles. I don't want to be known just as an Asian American actor. I just want to be an actor, But then I realized, man, you're whitewashing yourself. You're literally whitewashing yourself. You're denying yourself a core piece of your own identity. And it was being an interdisciplinary artist that I was able to kind of balance those scales and learn from. Another thing that I do is that as a guitarist, if I don't like my guitar, I can buy another guitar. I can play another guitar, but I will never not be 5'4" in Vietnamese. This is this instrument as an actor, and this is the instrument I have as a person. So stop running away from yourself, lean into yourself, and so that's something that gave me the cultural confidence to be able to step into any room and be like, this is me, because I know that all things being equal, you can choose someone with a certain skill set, but I will be the only me that you'll ever encounter. No, so.
I love that. Don't bring me to tears now on a live podcast. You said language is powerful. That's your word too, shared language. You said the words pivot. I heard pivot and leaning into yourself, which really touched me. How are you pivoting? What's that look like now? And how are you leaning perhaps more into yourself now during this time of, I would say, time of adversity?
Sure, absolutely. It's using some of the skills that I learned from storytelling, and also some of the resilience skills that I learned from wellness and therapy and things like that. And it's really funny, kind of combining cognitive behavioral therapy with storytelling has helped me create space for myself and for others in the midst of these multi-layered simultaneous pandemics. There's a reason why so many people are playing Dungeons and Dragons right now, right? They're escaping into what is essentially storytelling, you know? And that's kind of what I do for myself to unpack hidden stories. Things that I've talked to my therapist about is, where's the proof, and can multiple things be true? And, well, what's another perspective? And that's what storytelling is being able to depersonalize, remove yourself from it, because at the end of the day, all we know is our own story. We're the only ones inside our own head. But what is helpful is, as a storyteller or as a showrunner, producer, theater maker, one of my key tenets is it's not personal, it's process, right? There is a process that is necessary to mount this show, And so sometimes when things get heated, I have to remind myself that stage manager has a job, the director has a job, the actor has a job, everyone has their own job, And so is this a personal conflict, or is this just part of the challenge of the process? And it's the same way with storytelling. If you can remove yourself, and if you can kind of D&D gamify it and create this story, then you can depersonalize and realize it's just the process of the narrative arc of this story that I'm living in real time,
I love that. So I was going to say, first of all, I'm seeing the chat box go crazy, so I'm doing double duty here. But I really got a good question, because you talked a lot about COVID has done some shifts, not just just being a health crisis, but also a lot of personal shifts for people in relationship to identity. That's what I heard in the core message of your own self-acceptance, your own self-identity. What's the story look like today? If you had to do a new story or modify your story, what's it look like?
Sure. So let me give our viewers a little breakdown of how you can kind of depersonalize and kind of use storytelling to kind of hack your brain, really. So I am a performing artist, both music and theater. I also run a performance event space in Kansas City, the Buffalo Room. And so we were completely shut down. I lost a union theater contract, poof, up in the air. And my venue, which was on track for a record month in March, like we had, I want to say 35 shows booked for the month of March, which means that's more days than there were in March. We were pulling some double headers. So it was gearing up to be huge, and it all went away. And so in the immediate short term, I pivoted to make sure that our staff and our working artists that worked for us at the Buffalo Room were taken care of. And so I immediately pivoted and started live streaming twice a week as a singer-songwriter, and we were doing Wellness Wednesdays, where I would play more chill songs in my original work and just do wellness check-ins with the audience. And on Saturdays, I just did request anything, total request live, kind of request any covers you want to hear me play. And we just solicited donations to make sure that our staff weren't in catastrophic need. In the midst of that, I had to break myself down into a story because I knew that, okay, right now you're choosing to do this at the expense of your own self-care, right? So there's gonna be a trade-off. This is for now, this is not forever, because at some point you're gonna need to rest. You're gonna need to figure out what the game plan is right now. You're immediately pivoting into service, into helping others, and that's good. But keep an eye out, And so in me, there is, if you see right back there, there's baby V. That's me in the refugee camp, right? And so there's that kid, he's known catastrophe, he's known hunger, he's known poverty, and in moments of trauma, it's callback, right? And so let's call him Jeff. Jeff Tran is like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? Am I safe? And then there's me, like core ego me, who's like, everything's cool. We're gonna do this. We're gonna take care of our staff. And then there's producer me over here, who's like, but it's gotta be perfect. It's gotta be, it's like, if we're gonna go live stream, we have professional standards. It's gotta be perfect. And then I have to negotiate with my party, with the cast of characters in my story, and just be like, hey, Jeff, we're just going to play songs and help our friends. We're going to play with our friends. It's going to be cool, right? And then I have to talk to producer V to be like, look, we may be an experienced performer, but we are novices as live streamers. We don't have a camera set up. We don't have lighting set up. We're onboarding and learning as we go. So I need for you to chill out as well, And so in this same way as we negotiate with ourselves, it can be the same with the empathy we extend to others. That was my way of giving empathy to all of my different parts, to all of the different characters in my own story that's just in my head. And now you extrapolate that out to, your wife or your husband or your parents or whatever. And inside them, there's a cast of characters, right? And not just like the audition room, 99% of the time has nothing to do with you. It has to do with some anxiety that they're carrying, or something that's going on in the outside world, which there's a lot, right? So we're all carrying that in different ways. So I've been rambling for a second. Do you have any questions?
No, like I said, so many great insights. Everyone's saying so much about what you're saying. Okay, so listening to you sharing about that, of course, I'm putting in my therapist hat here. You said something about inner dialogue, lots of inner dialogue.
Yeah.
A lot of voices you were kind of dealing with, right? The producer, the actor, the team lead, the manager looking over your team. Which voice was the strongest, or which voice do you feel like you had to bring out more? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, every situation requires different party members, right? So again, bringing it back to D&D, sometimes you've got your tank who takes all the damage for you. Sometimes you've got your healer, or your fireball wizard, your mage or whatever, or your fighter. And the more that you have that inner dialogue and get used to and honest with yourself about the characters who are living inside you, the better you can put them to use. And this was writing The Butcher's Son helped me realize how much unprocessed inherited trauma I was carrying from my refugee journey, and how much armor I was carrying that I inherited from my parents, who, when they escaped Vietnam, were younger than I am today. They were kids. Right? And they did the best that they could with the tools and the armor that they had at their disposal, But when you're growing up, when you're growing up and you're told you can't go trick-or-treating, hashtag you'll die. Hashtag Mama Tran says hashtag you'll die, right? She's being literal because we were 1 mile away from the World Red Cross camp in Thailand, one mile away from safety. And to celebrate, she took us into the nearest village to treat me and my older sister to ice cream. And a villager said, oh yeah, I know where you can get some ice cream. And she turned us into the Khmer Rouge. So we ended up in a Khmer Rouge prison camp because our mom wanted to treat us to ice cream. So when I'm growing up in relative now safety in southwestern Kansas, when she says you can't go trick-or-treating, you'll die, she means it literally. To Kid V, to Jeff Tran, it's like, oh my God, you're being way overprotective, you're being ridiculous, Mom. But now as an adult, I can circle back and meet who my mother was again for the first time. And likewise, she and I can meet each other again for the first time. I as an adult and she as an adult, and we can talk about those stories and build that vocabulary to be able to unpack these stories, right?
Yeah. So along the lines of that, sorry to interrupt, but I was going to say, we have got a question from the audience that I think is a wonderful question that I myself want to ask you too, is what stories, when things are tough, do you tell yourself? Right.
Stories that I tell myself. This is not so much a story, but a therapy hack, and it's a therapist go-to. It's, can both things be true? Can both things be true? Where's the proof? And okay, so my mother was a preacher's wife. My father's passed, but my mother's a preacher's wife, and there's a Vietnamese phrase coming from her preacher's wife perspectives, where she's like, "Con ơi, đó là ma quỷ," and so Maui is a phrase where it's like, that's the devil, right? Those are our bad spirits or whatever. But I like to translate it as, that's ghosts and goblins, yo. That's ghosts and goblins, like the old school arcade game. And so when I hear these thoughts that sound like my voice, this negative self-talk that is in my voice, or this negative self-talk that sounds like my parents, like, oh my God, you're not achieving enough, and we're not proud of you, we're disappointed in you. And I'm like, you know what? That's just ghosts and goblins. My father would never say that to me. My mother would never say that to me. They've always supported me, and that voice that sounds like me, that's doing that negative self-talk. I'm like, dude, that's just ghosts and goblins, yo. That's not me. I don't feel that way about myself. So.
Wow. So and I think we're almost running out of time, but I was going to say, I would love to hear, as we're currently you're always still innovating. This is what you do, generative performing artist you are. What's your next step, or what are you looking forward to? What's your next story? Like, what do you hope to create, or maybe perhaps creating now? How have you found inspiration basically during this time?
Well, right now, as in every story, there's a narrative arc. And if this season needs to be a season of rest and pause, that's okay too. That's still progress. You don't have to armor up all the time, because especially now in a cataclysm, if you're in that part of the plot line, you got to wait and see. You got to be careful. You don't want to run into, the spooky forest where all the zombies are, right? Yeah, this is the time to check your supplies, make sure that you've got all the potions and the things that you need.
I love that you said.
Yeah, and we've been telling stories since cave paintings, right? And we tell the same stories again and again. That's how they become archetypes, right? And that's why we have a human tradition of myth and legend, right? And so on a long enough timeline, even though these are unprecedented times, the things that we're experiencing have an analog in history. So you just, instead of seeing this as these 6 months, you stretch it up to a long enough timeline, and you're like, okay, the Black Plague, okay, the Spanish flu, okay, these other eras, you know, and what can we learn from the resiliency that our predecessors shows. And for me right now, that's kind of where I'm at, is serving where I can, taking care of myself, because if you're in oxygen deficit, you can't help anyone else, you know. For all you runners out there, if if you're in oxygen deficit, that's when the lactic acid builds up, and that's when you're going to injure yourself, and you can't run away from zombies if you're limping along with a cramp, right? So take care of yourself, take care of others. Remember that there's a hidden story and often a cast of characters in every individual. The more that you practice this inner dialogue with your cast of characters, it's like a muscle. You know, the better storyteller you can become, the better processor you can become, about then having agency on choosing your adventure, choosing the story that you want to narrate, rather than letting outside forces dictate to you. This is not a free pass to sink into like bad habits of like, you know, well, it's my story, so I'm the only one who matters, et cetera, et cetera. That's what we call dramatic irony. That's the protagonist who gets it's hubris, and then they're set up for a fall, right? A tragic fall. So don't fall into that trap. Don't narrate. I'm not advocating for that. Don't narrate that kind of story for yourself.
I love that.
Try to expand your world and see what the bigger story is. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, thank you so much. Let's give just my B a wonderful, wonderful clap of applause for sharing that. That's just, I know we've gone a little bit over time, but you just had such golden nuggets. I was like, oh, I'm ignoring the cues of let's end. But thank you, B, for being here.
Thank you so much, y'all. Hey, be well. Take care of yourselves.
Monica, it's your turn.
Thank you, Jeannie, for bringing me back. I mean, wow, indeed. That was such a powerful time. V, Jeannie, thank you again for such a powerful insight conversation. And thank you all for joining us live. I am so humbled, pumped up. We had about 40 to 50 of you joining live constantly. And man, give me a little shout out and claps and appreciation in our chat box, please. Again, this is not possible with all of you co-creating the space, including all of you joining us live. And just wanted to extend deep gratitude. Let's just go back. An hour and a half ago, we started with Andrew and Eliza talking about cooking. We had the panel conversation with the 3 guests that I've had, where we talked about courage and how we reframe, and with V and Jeannie to think about how we tell our stories. Man, can we just take a moment and pause and be present? Often it's very tempting for us to just rush. And as problem solvers and innovators, we're guilty of needing to do that. And so one of the things I hope we take the intention of thinking through all of this today is, 1, what is at least 3 things? Write down 3 things after that you've watched this, and think about what's something that you want to walk away with, that you want to remember for yourself. And number 2, this is a question that we talked about in our morning breakout conversations for those who are here, but what are things that you might need to let go of to take a step closer to the future state of who you want to be? And 3, what are more things that you want to learn? Because there's always more to learn. And what I hope you're realizing is that there is always new insights that we can gain if we seek to understand and gain. So again, I want to add to one of my favorite quotes from Robin Roberts that I've been thinking a lot about, which is change how I think to change how I feel. And so whether it's the negative talks that is running in your head that's causing us anxiety as innovators and not sure what to do, whether it's comments that we don't know in how we need to operate our communication, as Jerry was mentioning, or Kevin talking about how we be more empathetic, and thinking about the dreams and the pain points, and Diego making sure that we think about how we go together. And as Eliza said, The food thing that we just consumed all the time, that's a meaningful connection time. And how do you reframe your thinking? Because we're going to be in this digital time for a while. How can email be more than just an email you send? How can this YouTube conversation be more than just something that you just send a chat box, but really make an intentional time to connect? And so with that being said, I thank you all, shouting out to a handful of you, Abolaja, Gayo, Leon, V, Spencer, Isaac, Daniel, Carlos, Candy, Bonnie, Manishka. So many of you have joined us online, and I want to just say thank you, thank you, thank you. Honored and excited again for those who are here for the full program. We will be back in our next portion, hang out at Discord, and we'll see you at the workshops. And again, for those joining us live, we hope that this inspired you and gave you courage to think differently. And so with that being said, we will see you all together again. Take a little screen break, and I hope that inspired you to know that nothing is impossible. It's just our mindset that might need that. And so with that being said, I will see you again. Have a wonderful day, weekend, summer, fall. We got this. We'll be back for those who want to learn more. Please take a moment to fill out the survey because we want to hear from you. What can we do better? What else do you want to see? And just want to highlight, we want to continue these. And so we'll be doing our next virtual summit in 2021 spring, because the world is going to be even more different then, and we're going to need some more courage and wisdom. So please, I'll put the link in the chat box so that you can fill out the survey, because we want to hear from all of you. And also, if you do, we want to say thank you. So you'll be in the withdrawal of a gift raffle. So please take a moment to do so. With that being said, for those who are in the full program, I'll see you shortly again for the next segment of the summit. And for those who are here, thank you for being present and have a wonderful weekend. And I will see you soon again. So please subscribe, connect. We have more things coming up, and I will hang out here a little bit more, and I will see you shortly. So this is Monica Kang from InnovatorsBox, and excited to see you.